Everyone's been young. I'm sure, when you pass a certain age and you look back, I'm sure many times you would say, I would have done this differently or I would have done that differently. Looking back, would you have decided to follow your passions when you were young? Like, let's call it like, 20 years old. Would you have done things differently? Patrick?
Yeah, and I'm always thinking about that. Like, my thing is, if I had just been more open to things that I perceived as being uncomfortable, not things that I was morally opposed to. I just mean social situations that felt foreign to me. Again, kind of a quiet kid growing up, kind of a late bloomer in terms of being more outgoing. I was always really reserved. I was always like, I had a million reasons to say no to a lot of things, to going out to parties, to going on random road trips, right? Because a lot of things get me out of my comfort zone. So it's like, ooh.
You and I were the total opposite.
Yeah? And if I could go back, I would be the person who just says yes.
But I've adopted those behaviors now.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, look, you did it in the right order. I mean, yeah, like I kind of flipped that switch in my 30s. And it honestly life-changing. Met so many people, made so many great memories. So yeah, honestly, if I could go back and do it again, I would definitely say yes to those opportunities. Definitely pursue those adventures, the opportunities, the passions. Definitely just like explore a bit more. So yeah, I mean, if I had to give advice to someone who's maybe like in the position I was, kind of socially awkward, not knowing what they're into. And that's the thing about following passions. You might not know what your passion is.
Right.
Just saying yes to certain things. It opens up doors. It broadens your mind a little bit more. Makes you think a little bit different. And it's sort of, it kind of snowballs, right? You say yes to something here and all of a sudden this opportunity opens up and then another one opens up. And then next thing you know, you're on a podcast. So definitely when you're young, definitely be open to those opportunities. Get out of your comfort zone a bit.
Alex,
Absolutely.
You were saying you were the opposite. Why don't you tell us about do you regret?
No, absolutely nothing. No.
Awesome.
No. And I would say, Patrick, what I noticed about you is that you not once did you mention like career-wise, you following your passion. It was just more like in a general sense. And that was exactly what I did. I didn't really think too far in advance. I was just like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to Thailand tomorrow. And I did.
That's awesome.
And then I just decided to skip my return flight and stay for, better half of a year instead of 2 months and go to school. And
see, they make Netflix specials about people like that.
I know. And it just wasn't.
Just a little ahead of your time.
It just didn't exist.
Yeah.
And I know I could have been like internet famous at the time, but thankfully I'm not. I don't have any regrets. I've had a lot of like really interesting experiences, a lot of negative experiences, a lot of positive experiences. I mean, I can elaborate on them at a later time, but there are certain things that I've seen that maybe would have shaped a little bit more of like who I am now and those anxieties that I have now because of being so impulsive and so open. But I have those experiences and I can relate to a lot of people and, a lot of industries so that now I am thinking career-wise, nothing really shocks me too much anymore. And I think that's really like advantageous when it comes to...
Was there someone that gave you that green light or did you just like take it?
It's called ADHD, actually. It was just me in my brain. But thankfully I had parents that kind of were just like, yeah, you do you. You're creative enough and you're smart enough to not like, I don't know.
Well, that's excellent.
Yeah.
I think there is a tremendous amount of value in opening yourself up to experiences when you're younger, because that can help inform the type of person you're going to be later on down the road. And I think just in observing, people of like my daughter's age, it's more accepted now to follow your passions, maybe sometimes to the detriment based on individual choices. But I think it's a much more accepting culture that we live in for doing that, rather than that regimented thinking, go to school, graduate high school, go to university, get a job, start grinding it out. There's a lot more acceptance now of, you know what, you don't really have to do that. And if you have some interests that you want to pursue when you're younger, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right, right. I would say from my experience, I do have some regrets. There's a few things that were probably natural in me, but I love my parents. I'm so fortunate to be born in that household and gave me so much love and confidence. Allowed me to kind of be here today, right? So I can't knock it. But I think a lot of it was, hey, this is the way life's supposed to be, right? You go to school, get your degree, have this type of job. And I was, late 30s when I'm like, hey, this is not really the type of life I wanted, right? I had that path of being a doctor. Okay, doctor didn't work out, go to University of Toronto, just basically have a certain path, right? And it was all about milestones and be a manager, be a director, be this, be that, buy the house. At times it felt like a thrill getting that degree, getting that, that job, that title. But after getting it all, I'm like, hey, you know what? None of this was like really what I was after, right? And it was in my mid to late 30s. I'm like, you know what? I'm an entrepreneur. That's in my blood, right? It was something that, I wish that, I followed that earlier in my life, right? I became an entrepreneur with wife and 2 kids and mortgages and big boy kind of responsibilities, right? But I would have loved to just follow my passions in my teens, in my 20s, right? But again, I'm very fortunate to have that path. It's better to have a path than no path. But also, as I'm a parent now and I have a daughter that's a teenager now and a second one that's, a tweener, I encourage them a lot to follow their passions. Just go after whatever they want, right? I'm here, you only have a certain time in your life where you can be stupid, make mistakes, and recover, right?
Right.
When you're older, it's not the same.
Sure.